Hey, how's it going, everybody? Hassan Moore, founder of Accolade Sports Media here. So, if you've been paying attention on LinkedIn recently, it looks like I'm dropping an explainer deck every day. I am not dropping an explainer deck today. I do have some stuff I want to talk about, though. So, I'm not becoming a podcaster yet. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But there are some things in NIL that I want to talk about, some air quotes recent occurrences, and a few things that I think are very relevant to what Accolade All Access Collective Edition is doing, and just some things that I feel like are not being discussed in a lot of the conversations that I'm seeing. So I did make a deck. I'm obsessed with decks. I would like to be sponsored by Canva if possible. Someone reach out to them. If anyone knows someone at Canva, please reach out and say there is a guy who makes a Canva deck every single day, even when he's just having a regular conversation. Let's make that happen, all right? Until then, let's jump into this deck. Even though I promised that I am not a podcaster, I'm going to break this into episodes just so it's a little easier to digest, and because I have a lot to say and ask you as an audience about what's happening. So this is No Nonsense NIL Talking Points, Episode 1. There are only two things I want to review today, but they do have a lot to do with what Accolade All Access Collective Edition is hoping to accomplish. And I hope that what I've seen and what I explain in this really shows why this is the perfect time for doing what we're doing. What did we learn? What did we learn during this hearing? Not surprisingly, yet still disappointingly, collectives were the boogeyman in this. Collectives were the bad guy. Congresswoman Harshberger brought up a fantastic point. She's like, hey, we're making a decision around regulating collectives. And there's no representation from collectives here. The entire time I was watching it, I was thinking, hey, are collectives going to get a chance to say anything? Are they even in the room? Not surprisingly, like I said, also disappointingly, they were not in the room. Pay for play and bad actors became very sloganized. It's not a government hearing unless you get some nice slogans in there. These were definitely the ones of the day. I want to have an entire conversation around the concept of pay for play. I thought Chase Griffin brought up some interesting points around the concept of what is and isn't pay for play and why this only really applies to sports. And then bad actors was almost exclusively conflated or associated with collectives. Like anytime someone said the word collective, soon after that, we ended up with the word bad actors. They didn't call them bad actors, but it was pretty close. Like you could see what was going on, right? And a lot of different parties did that. And then to no one's surprise, because we're having a hearing on it, the stakeholder alignment is completely off. There was some patting on the back and some, oh, I agree with you, which is fine. Like that's how we get somewhere, right? But it's shocking how far apart everyone's ideas are. Another thing that came up a lot in the hearing, and I feel like this is kind of true just in the general discourse, is that the concept of players becoming employees to everyone, except Chase Griffin, it's a dead horse. It seems like we're approaching a point where that's like not even a part of the discussion anymore. And it was interesting to see an attempt at killing that during the hearing. I'm just saying like, hey, we all agree this is bad, right? To the point that it was even being used to kind of associate with other things that are bad. Like, so this is one of those things that's bad, right? Right. Granted, they didn't let Chase go into too much detail about how he imagined that would work. They kind of asked everyone around him, considering he appeared to be the only person, at least euphemistically, in support of athlete employee status. And then the other one too, this is something that, I've been posting about this on LinkedIn since then, because I was like, see, come on, you guys, here we go. Is that NIL athletes are incredibly underprepared to thrive in the market. We heard that from every athlete. We heard that from a few Congress people. We heard that from Charlie Baker himself, that the athletes need to be better educated, even just from a consumer protection standpoint. Let's take a moment and circle back to this concept of the collectives not being in the room. The collectives are a major stakeholder in this. They have, a lot to say. They've even got some data that is important to this discussion. So it's very strange that they're not in the room. Councilwoman Harshberger brought up that they're not in the room and also submitted the collective association's letter. And it's really a shame that this letter or some of the major, kind of components and concepts of this letter weren't included in that discussion, because there are a lot of things in here that would have brought some clarity And I feel like it's very much on purpose that that clarity wasn't brought into the hearing. So let's talk through some of the key points, some things that I thought were interesting, worth talking about, and definitely help to inform the discussion now. So I read through this document about 4 or 5 times, just kind of looking at it from different perspectives, taking some notes. And these are the ones that really stood out to me. So there's this quote where it says, essentially, the collective association itself is saying, like, let's remind the committee of how we arrived at this point. And then it goes on to talk about how the NCAA stood sentry for decades in preventing athletes from having these opportunities in the first place, right? And I think that that's something that definitely should have been brought up during the hearing. I understand where Charlie Baker is coming from. I think that he's doing a better job than most people would be doing in his position. I think that he's at least attempting to find some solutions. We'll see how authentic that is over time. But the fact that the entire discussion was kind of framed around, I think there was even a senator who said this, like, oh, like, things used to be worse, and it's good to see that things are going in the right direction. And, you know, we're glad that the NCAA is stepping up to make it. And I'm like, but the NCAA, like, caused this. Like, we're acting like we have to either return to a positive state in the past, which did not exist, right? Or that, oh, like, okay, well, the NCAA is concerned that bad things might happen. I'm like, the majority of the air quotes bad things, including this concept of, like, the Wild West era, now that we have NIL, like, a lot of that is because the NCAA kind of pulled the plug and, like, let stuff go haywire. And then now they're saying, hey, look, everything's going haywire, right? And even now, lots of the things that, like, should definitely the NCAA should take point on, they don't want to take point on. And in many, you know, I don't want to go this far. I don't want to go this far, but it kind of feels like they're benefiting from the chaos. And I know that sounds kind of like conspiratorial, but definitely, you know, we'll come back to that at some other time, right? So the other one that I liked is there's a line in the letter that says the NCAA has spent more time trying to figure out how to regain that power and control instead of working to establish a sustainable future. So yeah, a lot of the actions that we're seeing from the NCAA absolutely seem like this. And again, this wasn't really brought up as an argument. Like, the NCAA's past as the cause of the problem wasn't discussed, like, at any point. Well, I think maybe there was like a quick reference to that. It was like an old boys club to protect something. But there wasn't any active discussion on the fact that the NCAA's rules for decades is what caused this problem in the first place. So very strange, right? Then the other one that I thought that was interesting is that aligning on a set of sustainable rules, some version of that was in the previous sentence, isn't as difficult as some would make you believe. That happened a lot. That happened quite a bit in this hearing, that there was this kind of strange urgency where it's like, we need to decide to do these regulations right now or make them employees or as if, like, everything else in the whole world has been tried and this is desperate and we need to do one of two options, super binary situation, right? And, like, is that true? Is that true? Have we tried everything? Has the private sector had an opportunity to try everything? Have we had enough discussion? Do we have enough data to really claim that, oh, this is the only way that this can be done is if we have the government appoint a bunch of people who are probably the same people who caused the problem in the first place to regulate a system that we, the government, barely understand? I don't know. And then this last one, I thought this was a pretty funny one too. So it said collectives are uniquely positioned to best assist our affiliated institutions in distributing these dollars without cost to college athletes. This is the other thing that I was very surprised no one brought up. I was very, very surprised. So there was a quick reference from, I believe, Congresswoman Trahan, and I think Congresswoman Harshbarger made some kind of quick allusion to this too. Harshbarger was absolutely hilarious too when she when she said to Charlie Baker, like, hey, if you're looking for solutions and you came to the government, you're not going to find them here. That was pretty funny. My inner libertarian was very pleased with that for a second. But let's talk about if this goes into the kind of world that Charlie Baker is talking about, where all the NIL activity, even if there are some collectives or some kind of private resources, are just supporting colleges, and colleges are ones that are really owning these NIL relationships. I'm not going to go too deep into this, but I will say this. Have any of you ever worked for, with, or been party to or subject to a college's administration. Like these are not efficient people. I have an inherent bias against bureaucracy, so I will just say that up front. Me and bureaucrats not going to get along, right? But I'm saying, do we really believe that between a private sector solution that is designed to do this and college administrations that are going to very reluctantly, in many cases, learn to do this, that the best party to handle this process is college administration? No offense to the administrators themselves. I'm just saying it's not the best tool. It's not the best tool. You can use a knife to tighten a screw, but I would prefer a screwdriver, right? So that was very, very strange to me. Now, this breakdown is not just me saying collectives are amazing and everyone needs to get off of collectives' backs. I think there's a lot that collectives need to accomplish and do in order to improve their position, right? So I wrote on this one, I said there's a growing danger to collectives in the conflation of the term collective with the terms bad actors and pay for play. Like we saw this happening a lot there. It happens in a lot of discussions. It happens in the media. The only stories that you really hear about collectives that gain attention are these very like fraud or fraud adjacent type stories. And like, yeah, that's a position that benefits the NCAA. That's a position that benefits the like government aligned parts of the NCAA aligned parts of the government. And that's something that benefits the media too. Like they would prefer to tell a story about some crazy thing happening, right? That's what gets attention. That's what keeps attention, right? And the collectives are in a position now where it's like, okay, so the NCAA, no matter how much they claim to really, really want to work with you, they don't want you to be the one to do this, right? They want to give it to the colleges for, we could say for many reasons, because they have more control over them. Who knows, right? They don't want to give it to you. And right now I see the collectives in a position where they're saying, hey, we're trying to get a seat at the table. We want the NCAA to recognize us, right? Like witness me, right? Cool. Fine. All right. Then the same thing with the government. I saw the collective association, they're deploying their lobbyists in Washington. Fantastic. Great. Awesome. Lobbying efforts with the government, right? But again, the government kind of wants this too. The government wants to establish as much bureaucracy as they can and put the people they want in positions and find ways to extract fees and all the things that the government does, right? And then with the media, like, sure, I see a lot of collectives dealing with more direct engagement with the media at large. Great, fantastic. The media, by its very nature, is still going to want to tell the bad stories first. I'm sorry, right? So if you have these three groups that, like, at best you can coexist with, but, like, kind of want you dead, then you should probably focus on the other group. You should probably focus on the group that you can provide actual benefit to and the ones that can and should and will support you. So let's talk about this, right? Athletes need to be the major ally of collectives, and I don't feel like collectives are focusing on that or putting enough time and attention into that relationship. The only positive or semi-neutral thing that we heard in this entire hearing was from an athlete, and it was sort of almost a backhanded compliment. So Chase Griffin made a reference at some point where he referenced something about collectives. He didn't attribute collectives to being bad actors, but he said that 80% of all the transactions are athletes going straight to companies, right? Okay, so he didn't say anything bad about collectives, but he did also kind of allude to the fact that, like, you don't need them, the vast majority. And I think that a part of that even played into some of what Charlie Baker wanted to get across, where he kept on having this concept of like there's NIL that has these bad actors, like cough, cough collectives, right? Or at least some of them, or most of the bad actors are in that space. And then there's true NIL, which is the athlete to the company, right? So if you allow those things to be reinforced, very soon the athletes themselves are going to feel like, hey, the collectives aren't really adding anything here. That all the best people in this space, all the best athletes who are successful did this on their own, and so should I, right? So I wrote here, there needs to be a value add. A lot of athletes, right here it says, a lot of athletes right now either don't see the collectives as useful or trying to surpass them with personal efforts. And that's because the collectives realistically need to be providing more to the athlete experience than just being the means by which the capital is raised and distributed, right? And then here's another thing too. If collectives want to stay relevant, Collectives have to grow and appear to be offering, new services and products, and gaining, I wrote in here, new intrinsic abilities, right? We have to see that collectives can do a lot of new things, and that those new things are directed at kind of the only people in the equation that could be a true ally to you, right? I get it. You want to coexist with the NCAA. You want to coexist with the colleges, with the government, with media, right? That's fantastic. Great. Have great diplomatic relations. But the only true, real, at its core alliance that you can have is with the athletes. So you have to provide more to them, right? And then also, if people are going to say we need to listen to the athlete opinion, collectives need to make sure that athletes have a great opinion of them. And I wrote here, athletes deserve to be provided with the kind of support and services from collectives that will compel them to defend the fact that no other group is better at conducting those efforts. If collectives are not going out of their way to do things for athletes that the government, colleges, media will that none of them will do it for them. There was even a reference of that from Charlie Baker where he said, hey, no one is doing that for these athletes. If collectives don't step up and do that, the only group that has, 500,000 college students every year, the only group that has enough people and that people at least on face value claim to listen to, you have to make sure that group is going to speak well of you if asked, right? And I'm not seeing that concept spread to enough collectives. I think the Collective Association is coming very, very, very close to that. I'm sure that they're thinking of these things too. I think that it's a fantastic concept that they're together. I love the kind of collection of political force there, but I feel like this should be a baseline, every collective thinking this way sort of thing, right? And that's a huge part of, why we made Accolade All Access Collective Edition is that, hey, if the collectives, if they need some support in providing this, because I get it, collectives, we didn't even know what they were designed to be, right? And they're, at face value, definitely not designed to in any way, educate or prepare athletes. That wasn't in the base blueprint. But if collectives, and I believe they can become the source of that kind of information and deliver it more effectively to more students than the college, the government, the NCAA, or anyone else can, then you have both solved a major problem and made quite possibly the most important enduring alliance you can. And I broke that down into, if collectives don't become thought leaders, if students don't look to the collectives as the leaders of these concepts, they will become thought followers. And I mean that because when I read through a lot of the different concepts of what a collective could be, we hear this thing of the bad ones will die one way or another, whether it's through the NCAA or through the free market, as Chase Griffin was saying, and the good ones will exist in a weird kind of tributary relationship to colleges. And that is a high possibility unless the collectives become exceptionally good at providing something to the students that no one else can. And I am super open to discussing this concept. Please reach out to me. And once again, I really value your time.